In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, we appreciate the Secretary General for his briefing and his contribution to this meeting. We express our sincere appreciation to the Russian Federation and China for supporting the convening of this emergency meeting of the Security Council to address the manifest aggression committed by the United States and Israeli regime. I also thank those Council members, in particular China, Pakistan, and the Russian Federation, who have today taken principled position in condemnation of this unlawful act. And it is regrettable that some members of this body, in a blatant double standard, disregarded the flagrant act of aggression committed by the US and Israel on Iran and condemn Iran for using its inherent right to self-defense on the UN Charter.
This address took place during an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, convened at the request of member states following allegations of direct military aggression involving the Islamic Republic of Iran, the United States, and Israel. Emergency sessions of the Council are reserved for matters considered urgent threats to international peace and security, making the tone and content of such meetings especially consequential. In this speech, Iran's ambassador framed recent military actions as unlawful acts of aggression under international law, invoking foundational provisions of the UN Charter. Specifically, the address centers on Article 2(4), which prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, and Article 51, which preserves the inherent right of self-defense in the event of an armed attack. These references are not symbolic, they are the backbone of the post-World War II international legal order. The UN Charter was established in 1945 with the explicit aim of preventing unilateral warfare and maintaining global stability through collective security. When a state accuses another of violating these principles, the implications extend beyond the immediate dispute. The ambassador's remarks also reflect a broader diplomatic strategy. In Security Council settings, speeches are crafted not only for the delegates in the chamber, but for global audiences, governments, international media, and domestic populations. The language used here seeks to frame the narrative as one of unlawful aggression versus lawful self-defense. At the heart of this moment are competing legal interpretations. One side argues that military action was unlawful and premeditated. The other side, though not speaking in this transcript, would likely argue that its actions were justified under self-defense doctrines or regional security concerns. Before forming conclusions, it is essential to separate legal standards from political rhetoric. Security Council debates often blend both. The question now becomes, how does international law define aggression, and who has the authority to determine when that threshold has been crossed?
Mr. President, this morning the United States regime jointly and in coordination with the Israeli regime initiated an unprovoked and premeditated aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran for the second time in the recent months, while deliberately attacking civilian populated areas in multiple large cities of Iran where millions of people reside. As a result of this brutal armed attack, hundreds of civilians have been killed and injured. The aggression and atrocious crime of the United States regime and the Israeli regime and the deliberate and persistent targeting of civilian infrastructure are ongoing. In addition to the numerous civilian residential buildings, the aggressors have also targeted a school in the city of Minab, Hormozgan province, killing more than 100 children. The number of innocent civilians continues to rise. This is not only an act of aggression, it is a war crime and a crime against humanity. Yet today, once again, the representative of the United States, through a regrettable pattern, has attempted to distort facts and rely on misinformation to justify the blatant aggression of the United States and Israel against my country. The facts, however, are unequivocal. The justification advanced by the representative of the United States today are illegal and entirely devoid of legal foundation. The baseless allegation invoked to defend this unlawful use of force have no standing under international law. The invocation of preemptive attack claims of imminent threats or other substantiated political claims cannot legitimize aggression. Such claims are unfounded legally, morally, and politically, and they contradicted the clear principles of the Charter of the United Nations. I also categorically reject the assertion made by the representative of France, the United Kingdom, and certain other Western members regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. These claims lack a factual and legal basis. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the Israeli regime have openly claimed responsibility for this act of aggression and have explicitly articulated regime change as their objective, an unmistakable admission of their intent to violate Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The President of the United States has falsely described this aggression as necessary to neutralize an imminent threat to the American people. This is nothing more than a deliberate attempt to mislead the international community and the U.S. public opinion and manufacture consent for unlawful war. Similarly, the representative of the United States has cynically sought to mislead this Council, yet history provides ample documentation that the foreign policy of the United States has repeatedly relied on unlawful force, covert intervention, and political manipulation to alter the governments of other member states. This record is well established. The reality is clear and undeniable. What is taking place today against my country by the United States and the terrorist regime of Israel is a blatant act of aggression, a full-fledged violation of international law. No justification, no accusation, no narrative of disinformation can legitimize or excuse this manifest crime and aggression. Mr. President, we have communicated on several occasions with this Council and the Secretary General about warmongering statements and interfering actions in the internal affairs of Iran by the President of the U.S. in a blatant violation of the UN Charter and international law, and called for the Council action. Regrettably, all were unanswered. The issue before the Council is straightforward: whether any member state may, including a permanent member of this Council, through the use of force, coercion, or aggression, determine the political future of another state or impose control over its affairs. International law and the Charter are explicit on this matter.
A central pillar of the ambassador's argument rests on the prohibition of force under Article 2(4) of the UN Charter. This article is widely regarded as one of the most fundamental rules in international law. It establishes that states must refrain from using force against the sovereignty of other states, except in two narrowly defined circumstances: self-defense under Article 51, or action authorized by the Security Council itself. The controversy often arises in defining what constitutes lawful self-defense. Traditional interpretation holds that self-defense is permitted only in response to an actual armed attack. However, some states have advanced broader interpretations, including anticipatory or preemptive self-defense when facing what they consider imminent threats. The ambassador rejects any claim of preemptive legitimacy, arguing that no imminent threat existed and therefore no legal justification applies. This reflects a stricter reading of the Charter, one that prioritizes state sovereignty and narrow constraints on unilateral force. On the other hand, Western governments have historically argued that evolving threats, such as missile capabilities, non-state actors, or regional proxy networks, may justify preemptive action when waiting for a confirmed armed attack could result in catastrophic harm. This legal tension is long-standing. It has surfaced in debates over Iraq in 2003, Syria, counterterrorism operations, and various regional conflicts. The question remains unresolved in many legal circles: should international law evolve to account for modern security threats, or should it maintain rigid limits to prevent abuse of force? The ambassador also referenced Article 39 of the Charter, which empowers the Security Council to determine the existence of any act of aggression. However, the Council's effectiveness depends on political consensus, and that is often complicated by the veto power held by permanent members, including the United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom. In practical terms, this means that when major powers are involved in disputes, the likelihood of formal Security Council condemnation decreases. Legal determinations become entangled with geopolitical alliances. So the deeper issue is this: is the Security Council a neutral arbiter of international law, or is it a political arena where enforcement depends on global power alignments? This speech ultimately reflects more than a bilateral conflict. It highlights structural tensions within the international system itself. The United Nations was created to prevent exactly this type of escalation, disputes between states that risk broader regional destabilization. Yet enforcement mechanisms remain limited. The Security Council can issue resolutions, impose sanctions, or authorize collective action. But when permanent members disagree, paralysis often follows. The ambassador's call for accountability, reparations, and formal determinations under Article 39 underscores a demand for institutional enforcement. However, history shows that accountability in international law is uneven. Smaller states are more likely to face unified action. Powerful states often navigate disputes through diplomacy, deterrence, or prolonged negotiation. There is also the dimension of domestic signaling. Speeches at the UN are not solely about persuading other governments. They serve to reassure domestic audiences, project strength, and frame national legitimacy on the global stage. Assertions of sovereignty, resistance, and legal justification are powerful political tools. The language used here, including references to aggression, war crimes, and regime change, signals high diplomatic escalation. Whether such rhetoric leads to de-escalation through negotiation or further polarization depends on subsequent diplomatic engagement behind closed doors. Ultimately, the broader question is about the future of international law itself. If states increasingly rely on unilateral interpretations of self-defense, the rules-based order may weaken. If, however, rigid interpretations prevent states from addressing emerging security threats, governments may act outside formal legal frameworks. So we'll leave you with this. Should international law maintain strict limits on preemptive force, even in the face of evolving security threats? Or should legal doctrine adapt to modern geopolitical realities? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. And if you value balanced, in-depth analysis of Security Council debates, global conflicts, and international law, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay informed as these high-stakes diplomatic developments unfold.